Hi, I am Maggie, travelling quilt teacher and author living in the Seattle area. Today I'm going to tell you about my template-free kaleidoscope method. Please watch the first video to see the basic technique for squarely set blocks. Today we're looking at on-point quilts using this technique. If you look at the center of this quilt, Dragonfly Dance, you can see the kaleidoscope block. The center block just has two fabrics, so it's easy to see these kites and wedges. This quilt looks very complex because on the sides you've got all these odd angles, but it's really not complex at all because the side triangles are simply made from half kaleidoscope blocks. This looks like an odd angled piece, but it's just half a kaleidoscope block. Down in the corner we have quarter of a block. It's much simpler than it looks. When you design these on-point kaleidoscope puzzle quilts, often you find that you need a lot more kites or a lot more wedges of one particular fabric. So if I want to just cut wedges, I would cut a 5-inch strip and then cut my wedges in alternating directions along the strip. I like to position a wedge of a contrasting color onto my strip, and then if I put my ruler up against the edge of the wedge like this, take the wedge away and then make the cut. That way I'm not cutting into that wedge when I cut through my strip. Then I would do the same in the other direction. So put the wedge down, put the ruler here, take the wedge away, make the cut. If you want to cut just kites, you're going to do the same thing. Make a 5-inch strip instead of cutting your 10-inch square, and then use a contrasting color of fabric for a template to put this down, and you can cut these alternating just like you cut the wedges alternating. And again I would put my kite into that position, put my ruler down, move the piece away and make the cut so that I'm not cutting into this kite. And you can see that we'll lose a bit of fabric here. That's going to be wastage. And the next one in the sequence will go over like this, and so on. When you piece the half blocks for the sides, you're going to leave these kites intact. If we cut this in half, this would be such a skinny angle it would be impossible to piece it accurately. So do the same as before, put your wedge on top of your kite and make pairs, and then you add this third piece onto this half. Then put the two together. We need to trim this up so that it's half of an 8.5-inch block. So I'm going to put my 4 1/4 right on these intersections, just as we did for the whole blocks, and trim this up. This diagonal line will be in line with this corner. These should be parallel, these parts of the wedges. So just trim up these two sides, and then you'll also need to turn the block around and trim up this side as well, and this side. The corners are just a quarter of a block. So we've got our two kites and wedges. Again, you don't cut those kites in half because it would be impossible to accurately piece, and this has to be trimmed just as we trimmed the others. We're going to put the 4 1/4 on the ruler right where that intersection is and line it up so that this is parallel here, and this diagonal line would go out to the corner of that kite, and then we can trim up these two sides, and you'll also have to trim up this edge as well, and then it'll be ready to assemble into your quilt. This diagram from the pattern of Dragonfly Dance shows you how to assemble the blocks in diagonal rows for this on-point setting. As you can see around the edges here, we have these irregularities because of these whole kites on the half blocks and also on the corner blocks. So just piece together in diagonal rows. Then once you've pieced, you're going to trim off these irregularities so you have a nice straight edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Check out part 1 for more detailed information on cutting and piecing for the blocks, and watch the 3rd in the series of videos to see my new op art kaleidoscope blocks, which develops this technique further. Please visit my online store at dragonflyquilts.com to purchase patterns. Have fun quilting!